Hello, I'm Professor McCoy, and today I want to talk about avoiding near occasions to sin, particularly using an example from the Star Wars EU once again. So, first of all, I want to go over what this means. What does it mean to avoid a near occasion to sin? And then I want to go through a particular example from Star Wars, once again from Fate of the Jedi, the Fate of the Jedi book series. And then I want to see how we can sort of apply this example to our own moral lives, our own spiritual lives. So first things first, um, an occasion here is referring to an instance where something can be caused to happen. And so an occasion of sin, or an occasion to sin, is an instance where there is a present temptation, where we could choose to do something that we know to be sinful. And so essentially, this relates to this phrase, avoid near occasions to sin, which we might recognize from the act of contrition, relates very closely to the line in the Our Father, where we pray that God lead us not into temptation. So to be led into temptation is to go somewhere, or to be brought somewhere, to be led somewhere, or to be shown some kind of temptation that could be what we call an occasion to sin. For example, I might say have a predilection to gluttony. I might overeat or overindulge in, say, desserts. And so if I'm out to eat, what I might do is I might ask the waiter, knowing at the outset that I'm not going to be hungry enough for dessert, and I should not do this, and that it would violate my diet, it would violate my moral principles, and it would be unhealthy and unhelpful for me to have that extra dessert. I might, as a way of avoiding near occasion to sin, or avoiding temptation, I might ask the waiter not to bring the dessert menu out after dinner. Or I might say, have my dining companions restrain me from ordering dessert, or take the menu away from me, or what have you. I might, in other words, ask help to avoid a temptation that I know I might give into. It would be difficult for me to overcome. And so this would be avoiding near occasion to sin. Right? So, what about our particular instance, our example within Star Wars? Well, this is from the later parts of the Fate of the Jedi series, where the character of Vistar Kai, who is a former Sith apprentice, who's been traveling with the Skywalkers, that is Luke and Ben, for some time, and is coming around. She is considering becoming a Jedi. She wants to reform her life and to leave behind all of the evil that she has done and the dark side that she's grown up in. I do have another video on that particular subject, on how she came to this decision, linked below. But the point is that she's obviously going to be struggling. She's going to be having difficulty avoiding the temptation of drawing upon the dark side in the most mechanical sense of using the dark side of the Force. But then also she has all of these bad moral habits. She grew up, of course, as a Sith in a Sith society, which is gravely disordered. There are all manner of bad habits that she has, habits of betrayal, of using other people for her own purposes, of selfishness, of cruelty. All of these things are as natural to her as breathing. But she knows that they ought not to be, and she knows that she wants to be better and wants to live a better, more morally upright life, and wants to come to the light side in the Star Wars context, right? And she knows it's going to be difficult. And so Luke Skywalker, as Grand Master of the Jedi, wants to help her. And so when they're out on a difficult and dangerous mission, Luke decides that he is not going to assign Vistara a duty which is going to put her in a position where she might be tempted by the dark side. They're interacting with the ruins of an ancient Sith society, and it's a very strong dark side presence, and he knows that there is a great danger ahead, and so he decides that Vistara should have a lesser role, one where she can still be useful, but won't be put into a position where she might be tempted to draw upon the dark side, or might be tempted to betray her companions, or might be tempted to do something for her own benefit or her own glory or what have you. He gives her another task, which does, of course, rely on her knowledge of the Sith. She's sent to find useful information from a different part of these ancient ruins that is not as steeped in the dark side and not as presumably dangerous. And the reason he does this is that even if she is capable of overcoming this temptation, he does not want to put her in a position where she might not be able to. Because she's aware of her status at the moment. Right? Her very tenuous position between the dark and the light. And he doesn't want anything to ruin progress that she's making. Okay? Now, unfortunately, because the drama of the story does go on, she does find herself, even on this presumably less dangerous part of the mission, she does find herself in a position of temptation, where in order to, I'll try and be vague about this, in order to do what she needs to do for the mission and even for the people she cares about, she winds up having to betray someone else, or at least she sees herself as having to. She's put in a position where betraying someone else would presumably help her. And she gives in to that temptation because it is how she is always known, what she's always known, how she's always known to act, to operate. And so she was placed into a near occasion to sin, or a near occasion, let's say, to fall back into the dark side. Despite, of course, Luke's best efforts to keep her away from this. And this, of course, I would say, vindicates his decision to not place her in a position where he knew she would be almost unavoidably tempted. Take an analogy, which is something that Luke actually uses in not in so many words, but he uses this to explain to her that it would be unwise for a teacher to put a student in a position where he knows that she will fail. Take another context of Jedi training, that of combat. If a teacher knows that his student is not up to a particular challenge, is not sufficient to fight a particular foe, then what he's doing by putting her in a position to face that foe alone is essentially setting her up for failure, potentially even just getting her killed. And that is not what a good teacher should do. Certainly not a good Jedi master, but in our particular context here of the sort of near occasion to sin and leading into temptation, not what a moral instructor or a spiritual director should do either. To place someone into a position where they are likely to fall into sin is to help them sin, and that's, of course, not what you should do if you're trying to help someone be better. Now, how do we apply this to our own lives? Well, if you know yourself, well, of course, that's the first step, is to know in what situations you are likely to fall to temptation. Then you should do likewise. You should do the best you can, not to simply place yourself in the face of the hardest temptations and try to the strength of your will to overcome them. No, that's foolishness and setting yourself up for failure. The more practical way of moral training is to only confront those situations where you know that you can succeed. Now, I'm not saying to only place yourself in those situations where it will be easy to succeed, but only place yourself in those situations where you know you are capable of succeeding. For example, if you know that you will be overcome by a particular temptation if it comes before you, then placing yourself in that situation is foolishness. That is choosing in advance deliberately to sin. For example, there's a probably apocryphal spiritual practice by I forget exactly what tradition this is from. I don't even know if it's a Christian tradition, but there's a again possibly apocryphal discipline of being in close proximity as a celibate monk, being in close proximity to attractive naked young women, as a way of training their self-restraint, let's say. Now, maybe if you already have a sort of heroic level of self-mastery and chastity, one might be capable of doing such a thing. But for most people, this is not a good idea. Right? This is almost certainly going to give rise to lust. Or at least it will provide a very difficult to overcome temptation to lust. Once again, if you, say, for example, you are tempted by, to use the previous example, if you're tempted by gluttony, if gluttony is a serious sin that you deal with, you know that you overindulge very often, and you also know that the place you are going to dinner has a fantastic dessert menu that you would like to not indulge in, going there with no particular restrictions on access to that dessert menu is putting yourself in a position where you are going to face temptation that is going to be incredibly difficult for you to resist. It's not a position you should place yourself in. So we've talked about the actual specific example. We've talked about the principle applied ethically to our lives. We've used a sort of combat training example, but let's use another one, just for maybe that might resonate with us as as ordinary, normal 21st century folks. Take an academic example. If you know that you are not good at math, you're not good at math, you're very bad at it, you've never really gotten it, it's not something that you've ever had a talent for or enjoyed or what have you. Or hey, maybe you do enjoy it. Let's just say maybe you do kind of enjoy math. It's just you're not good at it. And you have an option to take a high-level calculus elective. Now, this is an elective, right? This is not something that you need for your degree. This is not something that you need to take. It's not even necessarily something your academic advisor says that you should. It's just something that you think might sound kind of interesting, but that you know that you will probably not do particularly well in. Now, if you care about your GPA, it is unwise to place yourself into a class where you know you will do poorly. Even if it is in some way interesting to you, even if you want to for other reasons, it is unwise to place yourself into a position or to attempt something that you know you cannot succeed at it. I've used another example in the past, in another video, talking about what St. Augustine has to say about moral psychology and decision making, where if you say want to save someone from a burning building, but you have no training as a firefighter, you have asthma and are greatly affected by smoke inhalation, and you're recovering from a broken leg, and you choose to go into the building to try and save someone, you're not actually choosing to try and save someone. You're choosing to get yourself trapped and possibly killed. In other words, if you choose to do something where you know you can't succeed, you're choosing to fail. And now for moral decisions, choosing to confront a temptation that you know you cannot overcome, or you know will be extremely difficult for you to overcome, that you are very likely to fall to, is in fact just choosing to fall to that temptation, which is of course not something that we should do. So hopefully this has been a useful tool for introspection, and a benefit to our own moral lives, and also an interesting little micro story from a Star Wars book series that I've talked about a lot already at this point, but I enjoy very much. So, thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.